welcome all of us and our guests to today's event, which is the third in the process. The program where we invite top government officials, commissioners, people who have responsibility given to them by the governor of Anambra State, His Excellency Willie Obiano, to help in moving this thing forward. For them to have a very friendly chat. Mr. Ivensor, be rest assured that this is an interactive session that is devoid of any rancor, any unnecessary probing. The essence of this is for you, in a very relaxed atmosphere, discuss with us things we may already have idea of that you're doing, those we may not have idea that you're doing, and the things you have achieved. We want to let the public know from point of understanding and deeper knowledge of what is happening in NEWMAP, so that we don't push information out there into the public domain without facts, without figures, without insider knowledge. That's why we're here in a nutshell.
What more can I say? Bob has said everything there is to say. So we just want you to tell us your story with as much clarity as you can muster under the circumstances.
I want to express my deepest appreciation for putting this together, and we will at least try to do some justice to the topic of erosion in Anambra State, and what particular the Obiano administration has done to really amp up the fight against this very ugly menace that our dear state suffers from. The story of erosion in Anambra State is a very well-known one, but some of the salient points that we're about to talk about today is some of the things that we have done independently that nobody has recorded as the efforts that the state has made. So in 2012, the then governor, Peter Obi, and some very well-meaning Nigerians got together and decided that they were going to approach the federal government to find a lasting solution to the menace of erosion in southeastern Nigeria. Now, naturally, because Anambra was the capital of erosion in Nigeria, the then governor spearheaded that effort, and successfully culminated in the establishment of NEWMAP, which is a tripartite arrangement between the federal government of Nigeria, Anambra State government, and the World Bank as a funding partner. Now, we have two other agencies that are participating in this effort as well, the Special Climate Change Fund, as well as the Global Environment Facility. So together, they formed this very special vehicle to be able to drive state-led efforts at tackling erosion. Now, this happens because previous efforts at erosion control has been met with various stages of success, right? From the dismal to the not so successful. And a very innovative approach was attempted and was crafted to be able to address gully erosion across the entire spectrum of the southeastern states of Anambra, Imo, Ebonyi, Enugu, and Abia. And of course, Cross River State and Edo states eventually joined. Now, just to tell you in terms of success, NEWMAP now has 23 states actively participating because of the successes recorded in these first 7 mover states, as we call them. Now, in 2012, the project was established in Nigeria and became effective in 2013. By effectiveness, I mean that the funding arrangement was finalized between the federal government of Nigeria and the World Bank. And then the states had what they call a subsidiary loan agreement between them and the federal government. But the activity actually comes directly from the bank, that's the World Bank, directly to the states, even though federal government was the obligor of those funds. But that's just to tell you the story of how NEWMAP began and how the arrangement works. Before NEWMAP, the story of erosion, like I said before, was one that has been met with different various levels of success. And then the innovative approach that NEWMAP took now began to resonate across the different sectors of the environment and the environmental landscape across Nigeria. In Anambra total, we have over 1,000 georeference erosion sites that are actually known. The government would always tell you this, that in terms of size, in terms of landmass, Anambra State is the second smallest state in Nigeria. But now, because of erosion, Anambra State is shrinking just simply because of erosion. And that tells you the gravity of what we see. Erosion in Anambra State manifests in the form of fatalities, houses, businesses, caving in under landslides and burying people. I'm telling you, this is not something that's made up. These are stories that have been brought to us by the people who have witnessed it firsthand. Critical infrastructure, power line, roads, telecommunication masts, what have you, churches, schools. Communities are divided, cut off completely. Now brothers and sisters cannot mingle amongst themselves. Now, when you look at the social dimension that erosion brings, loved ones lose their breadwinners. Imagine the economic dimensions it takes on the families across Anambra State. When farmlands are lost, when businesses are lost. So we're not just doing erosion just for the sake of erosion. We're now doing erosion because of the human beings that are impacted. So erosion has become a social issue more than it has become an environmental issue, even though the environment is the one that manifests what we see today. And so these 1,000 georeference erosion sites across Anambra State have, in one way or the other, impacted significantly in a very, very grave and adverse manner the livelihoods of the people of the area where they are situated. And therefore, when you think about erosion, don't think about the deep gullies that you see. Think about the lives that are lost. Think about the businesses that are suffering. Think about the children that are not going to go to school. Think about the market women that are not able to access their farmlands and markets to be able to take care of their families. Now, it begins to bring home to you the real problem that erosion is really causing in Anambra State. Now, in terms of solution, amounts of resources available to the states, given its budget, even given the federal government intervention, pales in comparison to the size of the problem. Meaning that the state budget alone cannot fund erosion in Anambra State. Which is why, when NEWMAP came in, NEWMAP was assigned the biggest and the most dangerous erosion sites in Anambra State completely. So today in Anambra State, we are fighting erosion through 4 different angles. One is the state's Ministry of Environment. The second one is the state's Ministry of Works. The third being the Nigeria Erosion and Watershed Management Project. Now, in his wisdom, and with proper advice, the governor has now established what's called the Anambra State Erosion, Watershed and Climate Change Agency. Now, that's a very, very remarkable development here. But the signal the government is sending is that erosion has become for us a problem that is intractable. Therefore, we are putting our money where our mouth is. So by having a dedicated vehicle, an institution that's devoted to erosion and climate change, it's a very, very strong signal on the part of government. So it tells you that the government of the day, the government of Obiano, is taking erosion far beyond what other previous administrations have ever done, all combined. In order to be able to back up what they're doing, they have also put forward 1 billion naira in terms of counterpart fund to support NEWMAP's efforts across the state. Now, NEWMAP is able to intervene simultaneously across 14 sites in Anambra State. Now, 14 compared to 1,000 is a drop in the ocean. And therefore, the complementary efforts from the State Ministry of Environment and the State Ministry of Works adds to the flavor. So it tells you, in very strategic terms, what the Obiano administration is doing to curb erosion menace in Anambra State specifically. And therefore, what the message we at NEWMAP today have for the Anambra is to invite you to partner with the government to imbibe those socially and environmentally friendly practices and attitudes that helps to reverse the formation of gullies in Anambra State. Gullies do not form themselves, they also come side by side with flood, because it is water that actually causes erosion. When water starts to really dig a particular area because of continuous directed high velocity concentration of water in a particular area, it begins to weaken the soil becomes malleable, it becomes loose, and then subsequent rains really just washes out. All next time you see is the entire big gully. The Federal High Court here was a testament to a lot of us here. I don't know a lot of people who saw that happen. The Federal High Court was threatened. We had the World Bank people come to look at it. The next time, in a matter of 2 weeks, somebody else came back from Abuja to look at it. The wall, the federal government, the Federal High Court had collapsed. It tells you the severity and the speed with which this erosion advances because of continuous concentrated direction of water. So the first thing we're urging the people to do is to harvest storm water from within their immediate premises. That way, what you do now is you're reducing the amount of water that now gathers volume and velocity to cause erosion. That is eventually going to owe me, right? Now, they put some collector tanks and then do the water that catches the water from the roofs and directs them down into the tanks. Even though the tank might not contain all the storm water happening, what it does is that it slows down the velocity of water coming at high, from a height. So from the tank, it now flows very quietly and it removes all those erosive force that it has. So if you look at it, when each and every Anambra install such instrument in the different premises, you will see the great impact it has in terms of helping to reduce erosion. We are also urging our people not to build discriminately. The zoning laws in these states are there for a reason, to protect us, to guide us. People always fall afoul and they think that, you know, they are trying to give the system, but ultimately we are giving ourselves. When you build across a natural water channel, water will naturally find its way. Therefore, it passes through a different channel and then causes trouble for the next man. We're asking our people also to please imbibe the culture of not dumping refuse in our drainages. Because when you dump refuse in the drainages, what happens now is that it blocks the drainage where naturally water is supposed to be flowing, and then it finds a different channel, and then either causes flood for your neighbors or it causes erosion in a different area. So, giving you some perspective of what erosion, what the history of how NEWMAP was formed, and the state government's own effort at curbing erosion, and what we are asking the people to do alongside the government. Please support the government to help with the reduction of the incidence of gully in Anambra State.
Thank you. You succeeded in bringing it to the fore when you said something like if you look at a gully, you are not just seeing the gully, but you are seeing lives splintered, you know, by this menace. So that's the reason why I wasn't the only one touched. That's probably why you got the applause. Now we have a very great start to this session.
You said you're working on 14 erosion sites presently. Do we know how many such sites you've worked on since your assumption of office? That is one. Then secondly, what is the ratio of funding for each project? What percentage does the state government contribute? What percentage does the World Bank contribute? Perhaps the federal government too.
My predecessor has already started working on 2 erosion sites. And between 2016 and today, we are actually now working on a total of 14. So we have added 12, as it were. Now that has been made possible simply because the governor made it a priority, ensuring that the adequate counterpart funding was available to NEWMAP, and it also provided the political backing to NEWMAP as a project under the Ministry of Environment to take off and be able to access these funds that are warehoused in the common buckets across for all participants to access. Now, talking about what's percentage or what's ratio of the contribution from the states and the World Bank, if you look at it from that perspective, you would know that 1 billion naira is very paltry compared to how much we have actually accessed in working on those 14 erosion sites. But let me make something very clear. I think there's a section of this whole intervention that we are not talking about often. Now, we don't just only work in erosion sites. We also support the livelihoods of the people who have been impacted by this erosion by giving them grants to set up businesses. So remember I said erosion is not a physical problem, it's an emotional and economic problem. So it would solve erosion, but the impact on the lives that have been left behind will still be there if you do not do anything about them. So part of NEWMAP's intervention is to also help the livelihoods of those men, women, and children that have been impacted by erosion. So this administration has, to date, has disbursed over 200 million naira to communities across Anambra State, to men and women in a, what they call a community interest group, to set up piggery, poultry, soap making, what have you. And these people are actually making money, and they're able to support their families. So that's one aspect of NEWMAP we don't often talk about because it's not the visible part of it, almost often. The other part that we haven't talked about is the capacity building it has brought to into the state in helping to develop both the skills and the tools and the adequate resources to be able to handle erosion. One thing I should say is that the number of studies, whether it be engineering designs, whether it be a stormwater master plan, or whether it's an environmental impact assessment study, or whether it's a baseline study, these assets are now represented within Anambra State and now serve as a reference material for anyone who wishes to do research in the areas of erosion or who wishes to understand the impact of erosion on the people of Anambra State. Now, for example, the Vision 2070 committee has recently requested documents from us. And the remark that was made by one of them was that we did not know that such materials were actually available in the States. So the amount of funding and the investment being made into understanding the nature of erosion and its impact in itself supports that long-term effort, like James said, that enduring effort to ensure that the future generation would no longer have to make that effort or make that investment in understanding how erosion is impactful in Anambra State and what it has really, what damages it has really caused to the people and the psyche of the communities across Anambra State.
We would like to know, you as someone in charge of NEWMAP, can you really tell us why Anambra State is vulnerable to erosion? Is it nature? Or is it man-made? Want you to really make it very clear to us so we can understand why we have to live with this man.
Erosion, according to the study carried out not by NEWMAP, but by the World Bank as part of its justification for establishing NEWMAP, was that gully erosion in Anambra State and most of southeastern Nigeria was attributable to broken drainages, meaning drainages that have either failed or were terminated abruptly as part of the construction process, either road or whatever other development efforts that were being undertaken at that material time. Now, what happens is that those drainages serve as a funnel for channeling stormwater directly at a distance of a parcel of land, and then concentrates that stormwater on that parcel of land that makes it disintegrate. Now, so 99% of erosions are actually man-made. Now, it is so because the geomorphological aspect of our soil predisposes it to disintegration when it comes in contact with moisture. Okay? So we have both natural and human-made, but the human aspect of it is actually far, far greater, which is why we're asking people to stop building indiscriminately. We're asking people to not dump refuse in the drainages. Now, it is noteworthy to mention that this administration, another thing this administration has done in helping to check erosion is that it has established a task force. Now, this task force in ESCO is responsible for reviewing all designs for new projects to make sure that proper environmental impact assessment is done, one, and two, if we are building a road, if we are building a drainage, that drainage is properly terminated in a natural body of water where it no longer becomes a problem, where it no longer creates erosion. So you see, the Obiano administration has created a series and series of impactful policies and successive management so that we reduce the impact, the incidence of gully formation in Anambra State, because it's one of the biggest things that actually troubling us today.
The fact that we are developing is actually giving us this issue that we're having to deal with. Now let us go to site with you. Can you give us a sense of a mental picture actually of what you do when you go on site? Are you able to stop erosion like outright, or do you just prevent further encroachment? What do you do essentially? And secondly, I would also want you to touch on this. How proactive have you been in mapping the route, that is the pathway, in certain places where you've observed that it's ongoing, of course, over 1,000 sites? People in every part of Anambra should be worried because we don't know where next. So are you able to tell where it's going next and to proactively go there and prevent it? I mean, the Federal High Court's wall fell, so who knows where next?
A series of things that goes into developing an intervention profile because every gully system is unique. You know, the direction of water and what are the morphological and geological formation within that particular area. Now, so a number of studies will be conducted, and then we utilize a significant amount of geospatial technology, GIS mapping, and all so enable us visualize the gully, what it was 5 years ago, what it is today, and what it can probably look like in 5 years to come. Now, tools like Landsat and Google Maps are available to help us do this. Now, we also look at the social dimension of erosion, its impact on the people, and what the people also do to cause erosion. Then we also now look at the environmental causes and aspects of the study. So these studies is what informs what intervention we take. So in some instances, what we do is actually to, first of all, harvest the water that is causing erosion from source, and now terminate that water directly at the nearest natural body of water. By doing so, you have completely eliminated the source of erosion. Now, the structure that you put in place to arrest that water and to dampen the erosive force of that water will differ from one place to the other. Now, we also have come into contact with what we call flexible materials, because not every situation that concrete is appropriate. You build concrete canal some way, and you find that the soil structure in that place might lend it to undermining, such that the concrete might actually fill up subsequently. So you apply what you use flexible materials, which allows the movement of water but stops sand from seeping through. So what that happens is, over the years, as sand pile build up, the land heals naturally. And once you do that, you now use vegetation to cover the surface so that its natural look and feel is actually returned. Now, another aspect that we need to talk about here is deforestation. When you remove the natural vegetative cover, what you do is you lay bare the soil. And the impact of extreme heat and extreme moisture really, does a lot of damage to the soil. Now, not only are we talking about it causing gullies, but it also removes the nutrients that makes it arable for farming and all as well. So, an extensive part of what we do in gully reclamation is actually to plant trees and shrubs in order to be able to regenerate the natural look and feel of the place, to return it to its most natural state. So on that point, so we completely eliminate erosion at all, right? Ensuring that there will be no further development of gully erosion within that catchment.
In the course of your of answering a former question, you touched on something that I would like to prod a little deeper, because oftentimes we do not understand what people who have been rendered homeless or whose businesses have been uprooted by erosion, go through. And I am aware that, like rightly pointed out earlier, there have been a series of interventionist efforts from NEWMAP to some of these people. You know, would like to know how many communities that you have been able to reach, who have benefited from this gesture, and the kinds of businesses that some of them are involved in. Because the essence of this interaction is also to show how close to the people this administration has been. That this administration is not a contraption with roots in the sky. That actually some people's lives have been touched. Some very vulnerable people in different locations. Can you bring this closer home, sir?
We are talking about 16 communities altogether, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,700 people, and for which about 60% of them are women. Now, in demographics and in social sciences, if you look at the history of crisis, women and children have been the most adversely impacted whenever there's a crisis. And therefore, our intervention tends to focus on this demographic. The women, the children, you often find widows, women heads of household, who have lost their husbands either to this erosion or to some other means. And therefore, when you empower a woman, you empower an entire family. Right? So, women tend to form a greater part of this intervention. And let's take, for example, a community in Anambra that's close to us here. So we have an interest group of about 12 people that are involved in poultry farming. The last time I understood it, they were on their 5th replenishment of the chick cycle, right? So that tells you how very lucrative that business is for them, right? In a bag that you just mentioned, there's an oil palm interest group as well. Now that oil palm interest group has actually evolved its own sub-interest group that are now supporting a neighboring community in establishing an oil palm industry to help them harness and increase the volume of palm products that actually gets to the market. In Anambra specifically, we have a fish farm that is thriving. We have a snail farm that is also thriving. We have a CIG that actually has a farm that grows cucumbers and watermelons. And sometimes they just bring a couple to us to the office, and these things are really, really huge. So these are just a few examples of how this administration, through NEWMAP, is touching the lives and the people of the people at the grassroots. These are actually real life situations that we have witnessed. And this material here is what we really use to evangelize the work that we do in NEWMAP. Part of what we do is that because we use public funds, it is also our obligation to report to the public what we're doing with those funds. And then through our social media outlets and through publications like this, we give you a very succinct report of what the things we have done, all the things we have achieved in the various different sectors that we're working in. How many acres of land has been reclaimed? How many people's lives have been impacted? How many kilometers of concrete has been constructed? And we give you the pictures of what it looks like before intervention and what it looks like after intervention. So you get an appreciation of how much investment is really going on there. That way, the Anambra people have an appreciation for what it is that the government is doing on their behalf to not only stop erosion, but also to impact on the lives of the people that are most adversely affected by this menace.
It's over 1,000 erosion sites in the state. How do you prioritize these erosion sites, like the one that is more important than the other to quickly address? Secondly, with the volume of work to be done on the erosion sites, the length of the rainy season and the short time you have with the dry season, and the issue of finances, how do you quickly arrest some of the projects you're working on to be able to move on to other projects, because there are lots of challenges? How do you manage these challenges? Because there are lots of work to be done and new erosion sites are coming up every day.
Unfortunately, the resources are not limitless. So prioritization has become a very, very critical part of what we do with NEWMAP. So in the project's implementation manual, so we actually do have a manual that helps us implement this project. We have a set of criteria, about 7 of them that has to be looked at in order to determine what gully sites get attended to first before the other. You will notice now that according to the senatorial zone, the Anambra North Senatorial Zone has not one single erosion site that we're working on right now, except Onitsha. Okay? Most of our interventions are in the central and in the southern senatorial zone, because that is where the most impacts are. So naturally, you go where the problem is. I have some people from that part of the state who said to me, why are you working on those areas? Does that mean that there are no erosion in the north senatorial zone of Anambra State? And the answer was simple, and I said to His Excellency, the severity of erosion that we have in the central and the south is much more significantly more devastating than what we have in the north. Therefore, the focus of our attention and intervention should be on those most severely impacted. So there's a prioritization that we have to go through to determine which erosion sites gets attention and which, will not get attention, simply because we don't have enough money to do everything. Now, remember that the funds coming from World Bank is a loan. Yes, it's a very soft loan, meaning essentially less than 0.1% interest rate with a 10-year moratorium over 40 years. That is almost like, nothing when it comes to it. But at some point in time, the state's accountants and the money managers will have to make a decision as how much can we really borrow. But then you also want to ask the question, if you don't borrow to do this, what will be left of the states in 20 years to come? So it's a chicken and egg situation where we have to really be very adept at doing our analysis such that we can justify every investment we're making in erosion control. So because we don't have all the money, this is why the Anambra State's Erosion, Watershed and Climate Change Agency has been empowered to go out and solicit for funding for some of these erosion problems that we have. Which is why the governor is making a lot of strides in his appeal to the federal government to come to the aid of Anambra State when it comes to erosion intervention, right? So we're talking to the president, we're talking to the Ministry of Environment, we're talking to the Office of the Secretary Federation of Nigeria, where the Ecological Fund is domiciled. And we have had some very limited success, really. But you find that, to a large extent, it's a self-help effort. These entities are actually doing a number of erosion control works around Anambra State. But again, compared to the number that we have, we need more. But we need more means that we're also telling our people, let us reverse those practices that we imbibe every day that causes erosion. Prevention is better than cure. But right now we're in emergency mode because the erosion is already there. But let's make our own personal, individual, community effort to ensure that we're not contributing to the formation of new gullies.
In the course of your remarks, you mention of discharging water, a gully water into a body of water. I want to know, where there is no body of water in the area you intend to discharge this water, what happens? It is not inside. I say this conscious of the fact that somewhere around Obulike, between Obulike and Afibe, the press house, I presume there's an attempt to discharge water somewhere there, to contact erosion on that road. And there's a kind of artificial lake that was created there. But over time, you see water overflowing and still getting on the road. So that job is not properly done. I know that has been there before, at least your office. But how do you manage that? Because that's the problem. And that's a situation where you don't have a body of water readily available where you want to discharge it. Another thing is it right? Because we saw somewhere in Lewi, the press site, I think you made an intervention there. I don't know if it is NEWMAP or the state. Then after that, people went on the social media to say that it wasn't the state government that did it, that it was NEWMAP. At what point do we now attribute what is done in the state to NEWMAP and then to the state? Because some of these things are done. Of course, you're doing something somewhere in Umbridge that I know. I am privy to that. But most times when these things are done, because if you didn't tell us now, most of us are taught that everything NEWMAP does is from the fact that you don't even have contributions. I mean, the state. It's just about World Bank and possibly the federal government. And that possibly also gives these people who believe that it's not the state government that does it, that it's NEWMAP. They will now know that it's soft law, almost that it is the state government that does almost everything. We know the situation, we have Aroli, Obelago, in Onitsha, because we had a discussion with the Commissioner for Works. And you know that that particular place has almost consumed about 50 buildings. I don't know if NEWMAP is doing an intervention. There is entirely State Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Environment.
In terms of discharging stormwater as part of erosion control measure, is one that has to be very strategically determined. Now, there's no way where we have worked that water is discharged into just a floodplain or natural farmland. In every catchment, if you look at the hydrological map of Anambra State, there's a river not more than 2 kilometers away from the goddess site. So sometimes NEWMAP intervention consumes more money because we want to take that discharge down to that river. Because if you don't, if you terminate it halfway, another erosion will start. It will cost you twice as much. So we don't want to be penny wise, pound foolish as part of our intervention effort. So we always take our intervention and discharge the water that's causing that erosion into the nearest body of water. Which is why we're saying that before any particular intervention is done, we do a number of studies. And that studies include the hydrological map of the area to determine where those natural bodies of water are located. That way, your design is guided by the hydrological study that you've done. Now, in terms of the one that near Africa you're talking about, that area was actually part of what we did under the Onitsha Stormwater Master Plan. The Anambra State government, under through NEWMAP, did a master plan of the entire water discharge system around Onitsha Metropolis and its environs. What I mean is, it included Ukpo, it included 3-3, it included the Bosi, right? Because all of these are what we call the contributory catchments that actually discharges water into Onitsha. So, Obelago PCR that you just mentioned, the water that is causing the erosion in Obelago is not from Obelago. It's from somewhere from Limca, several kilometers away. So you have to understand the terrain and the hydrological nature of the catchment you're working in order to be able to determine the best sort of intervention to carry out. In cases, so we've never seen any case where there's no natural body of water where to terminate the water to. We haven't seen a NEWMAP. Okay? Now, in terms of the confusion between the ownership of NEWMAP between the states and any external entity, it's a matter of misinformation. If you look at this publication, it started with Anambra. You open the first page, the first thing you see is His Excellency. The ownership of NEWMAP in Anambra State is wholly and entirely the prerogative of Anambra State government. The tendency for people in the community to target to World Bank is one that we have through several education and communication with them to try to reorient their thinking, to letting them know that it is Anambra State government that's actually doing this project. And it has been successful to that extent. But so that tie to World Bank is something that we're trying to break. In every publication that we have, in every outreach that we do, Anambra State government is front and center. Okay? And it's an ongoing, it's a work in progress for us. That education will continue because what we're trying to do is to sensitize the people that because Anambra State government is the one actually doing this intervention, therefore it becomes you and I's obligation and responsibility to ensure that the success of this intervention in our various communities. Oh, I knew I was on Cabo Kai. Brock and the Abuja and the World Bank.
Yeah.
Oh, Anambra State.
Thank you very much.
Oh, no, but the couple. So every time I have been in the bag, in Obosi, in Onitsha, in Newi, in Enugu, and everywhere. These interventions are actually community owned and sponsored by the Anambra State government under Chief Willie Obiano. We'll continue to educate people and to enlighten them on the ownership of this project.
You know, you've talked about the key area for such a program. I felt that at inception is an interventionist program, but from the quantum of disaster that you have faced, it's become part of our lives, and Anambra is particularly. Now that it's become part of our life, we're a program of this nature, and all the misunderstandings that come within it. Is there a component of the program with respect to your operating manual that has a specific budget for community mobilization, advocacy, and sensitization? I'm not talking about this. Looks like a good document, but it looks more like an in-house publication, which is the latest. What do you do at that community level to educate the beneficiaries of the program to take in that concept of ownership, which will also impact activities that lead to degradation of the soil? That's one. What is the level of coordination with the new agency you just mentioned? Ministry of Environment, clear drainage, things to make sure there's no dichotomy of operation with respect to what it is.
We have a specific item in our program that's purely dedicated to communications, which is why we actually do have a communications officer who is here with us, Mr. Engr, and most of you know him. Now, in addition to that, we collaborate extensively with the state's media apparatus, the ABS, the newspapers, and the supervising agencies in the Ministry of Environment as well, to target messages, jingles, radio programs, TV appearances that educate the people in the Anambra on these different things that we're doing in their community and how they, as the people, can get involved as owners of the project. At the third level, we have hired a particular consultant that is dedicated to this community outreach. So, for example, in communities, we have what we call the different social groups, the market women, the religious leaders, the community leaders, the PGs, the Igwes and traditional rulers, the school children. In Abagana, for example, we have a NEWMAP vanguard. These are children, these are students that have actually been coached, and actually been addressed severally on the cost of erosion. And we have made them ambassadors to take this message back to their own respective communities. And these practices are the things that cause erosion, and this is what we can do to reverse that trend. Okay? So, through the market women, we educate them on some of these things that they do that also causes the blockage of drains, the farming practices, and with our colleagues in the water resources departments in the Ministry of Environment, as well as public utilities, we have a periodic roadshow that talks about tree planting, that talks about water harvesting, that talks about drainage management, that talks about even our own urban physical development plans, and the need to respect government's policies and laws as regards building in what we call restricted areas. And so yes, so the answer is a very robust yes. We have a very, very robust mechanism for interacting with the community, and we have these different levels of engagement that we have in order to be able to educate people about what it is that we do and the ownership of this project. The only way for us to succeed is that these agencies have to work together. The synergy is critical to the success of Anambra State government's fight against erosion. Because you can see the agency responsible for drainages and forestry restoration is doing very similar things to what the agency responsible for erosion control, watershed, and climate change is going to be doing. Therefore, because the two new agencies, there hasn't been a formal bilateral engagement between those agencies. By the time the officials or the officers of these agencies have been inaugurated and put in place, these interactions, these synergies will be seen to have kicked in and will be seen to be moving in motion. Because you cannot work in a silo. Right? So that arrangement allows for that interaction to happen, and everybody brings their ideas to the table. And then, so we can all adjudicate and find how best to address erosion problems in Anambra State.
It is really disturbing, but not surprising, that erosion is mainly caused by us, as you said. The case in point is Amici Obodi Road, where poor termination of drainage has caused a big gully. And that informs my first question, sir. How do you identify new erosion sites? Do you have a monitoring team, or do the communities have to report what is happening in their areas to you? The second question is about climate change. And I believe most people here have that impression that erosions are actually caused by what happens around us and minimally by human contribution. But you mentioned that you're doing something about climate change. I want to know what your agency is doing in that regard, and how you've been able to, if you're doing any research actually into the impact of the climate change on erosion menace in Anambra State.
The work that we do, the sites that we work on, where we intervene, has to be previously agreed to between Anambra State government, the federal government, and the World Bank. That means, for example, that if at the beginning of every year I have 2 or 3 sites on my what I call my work plan, I can't, as a matter of guideline, go and bring in a fourth one. It is the way the project is staged. So, like we say in Igbo, if I wake up the Lord thereafter, and because we have other participating states that are there also drawing from the same port, it makes it difficult for us to be able to work on everything that's available. I would really love to do that. I cannot tell you how many calls I get every day, how many reports I get from an Engr, a PG, or a pastor, or anybody who's reporting an incident in their... And these are all heartbreaking. But we don't have the money to work on everything, unfortunately. Which is why the parts of this project are dedicated to reorienting the minds and hearts of our people to focus more on the preventive aspect becomes very, very important. The other aspect is the aspect of ownership. Once people begin to feel empowered that this belongs to them and this is theirs, they will take care of it. Let me be honest with you, we haven't been very successful at doing that. There's a general understanding amongst Nigerians and people here in Igbo land that everything is government's problem. Everything cannot be government's problem. Government can only do so much. That site, that's Obodi site you just mentioned, it is not under NEWMAP's purview. It's definitely one that we'd like to hear about. So every time we get a report from a community or from any particular site, we have a repository or some kind of a list where we keep them. So that during the next round of erosion intervention, we go back to that repository and choose from amongst those. And then categorize them in terms of severity, impact on human lives, impact on critical infrastructure, and all those criteria that's spelled out in our manual. And then decide on which ones we're going to work on. And so on a very high level, that's how we determine what we do. The message here is that we don't have enough resources to work on every possible erosion site. The message to our people here is we need our people to get involved. so that we can take ownership and also respect the rules of environment that can help us. Now, the question about climate change. Now, there's a component in NEWMAP that is dedicated towards climate change. That component was originally slated to be an activity carried out at the federal level. Okay? Now, recently, NEWMAP was given a grant to carry out what they call climate-specific projects in Anambra State. And this is what we did with it. First of all, let me bring to light the issue of climate change and the thinking behind climate change. Erosion is caused by increased rainfall. Increased rainfall is as a result of climate change. If you look at the climate's rainfall curve, their chart of rainfall intensity and volume across the southeastern Nigeria in the last 20 years, the curve looks like this. Meaning it increases every year. And the reason why it increases every year is because of the impacts of, the climate, as it were. Greenhouse gas emissions, generated by industries, by transportation, by energy, by agriculture, by oil and gas activities. So when these greenhouse gases, go out there and cause all the problems they do, they cause out there, they come back to us in form of extreme temperature and extreme heat and extreme rainfall. That is how climate manifests. Climate has changed. And it has changed as a result of human activity. Okay, so now let's extrapolate climate change to now bring it down to erosion. So as we experience increased rainfall, gully formation will increase naturally. Look at what has happened in the last 1 month. The rain hasn't stopped falling. Now, our construction sites cannot make much progress. Right? And we're getting more and more reports of erosion and flooding incidents across Anambra State. So this is what climate change looks like. Now, in terms of our own contribution under NEWMAP to climate change activities and support for the state, we are trying to reverse the trend by limiting the amount of energy, the amount of emission that is generated that becomes responsible for this change in the climate trends over the last 30 years. So, for example, we actually built 4 boreholes for schools. We actually targeted schools because access to potable water is a very essential part of existence. And we use solar-based pumps. There's no need for maintenance. There's no need to buy fuel. There's no need to buy a generator. Right? There are no emissions involved. We established 7.5 kVA solar power supplies to 12 primary healthcare centers. The state of our primary healthcare centers is deplorable. Sorry, I don't want to do that. But what I'm saying is that for midwives and pregnant women who go to these places to receive care, at night they use torch and lamp and hurricane lantern to attend to them. How much care can you get in that kind of circumstance? So we targeted this specifically because they are the ones that are closest to the people at the grassroots. That's why they're called primary healthcare centers. So we provided them with lights, with power, so that they can function and provide better care to our people. So if you think about 7.5 kVA multiplied by 12, and tell me the kind of generator you will use to generate that kind of power, and the fuel that you have removed, the greenhouse gas emission you have removed from the environment, it seems small to you. But when all of us individually add up all our small efforts to removing greenhouse gas emission, it becomes huge. We distributed 27,000 units of low energy bulbs. This is how we thought about it. So if you take a typical 60 watt or 90 watt bulb and the amount of energy it gives off versus the intensity of light, and replace it with a 10 watt bulb that gives off the same intensity, the amount of energy you're saved that could have generated the emissions is significant. Now, in the era of COVID, we all have seen that very nice innovative device that was created by one of our Anambra State brothers, where you have a touchless system for washing hands and sanitizing our hands before we go into places. It's solar power. We have supported this local economy by purchasing 85 units of those machines. Now we're going to put in strategic places across our institutions in Anambra State. So we are killing 3 birds with 1 stone. We're supporting the local economy, right? You're using a solar technology to achieve the effort of driving away COVID-19, right? All in the same one single project. Another thing we've done on climate change, so 35 homes across Anambra State where we work, we funded and installed 1,000-liter water tanks to help with harvesting stormwater that actually would have flowed out of those premises into the streets and cause erosion. So when you multiply all of these little discrete efforts, it comes up to a lot. And the idea for this climate change agency is to continue to make such investments in the states to increase low carbon activities, low carbon investments. When you think about our kekes, when you retrofit our kekes with solar power, imagine the amount of greenhouse gas emission you're removing. So in terms of what we're doing, these are some of the little stories that we have under NEWMAP that we're doing. These are owned by Anambra State government.
During your opener, you made mention of the fact that you inherited 2 projects, and then you added 12 more. But you haven't talked about the completion of those projects. Are they still ongoing? Are they being completed? Because even this one that is in the premises of the court, the High Court, it appears abandoned. I don't know. Maybe you want to talk about it.
So with respect to the number of erosion sites that we have completed, we have completed 3. And they're going to be commissioned soon by the governor. The others are in various stages of completion. The first one at Federal High Court, sometime last year there was a lot of back and forth about people trying to discredit the work that's been done there. Let me put this on record. The intervention at Federal High Court was what you call an emergency intervention. Was directly and purposely only to halt the erosion that was advancing against the Federal High Court. And that has been achieved. Now, we have a second phase of that project. As a matter of fact, I just finished the advertisements. I put an advertisement in the paper inviting contractor for the second phase. That has been just closed last Thursday. So that phase 2 is going to continue. And that phase 2 is now going to work on that entire Federal High Court area behind Equipment Square and then down into Obiano. Because the nearest stream to this area is Imoka. Otherwise, I would have just terminated it somewhere and behind of Federal High Court and left it alone. But that's not how we work. We take it to the nearest natural body of water. So that project will actually terminate in Imoka, that is about 1.5 kilometers away from that particular area. So please, tell your people that the project is not abandoned. Now we are actually about to begin the phase 2 of that project. The initial phase was to halt that advancement against the Federal High Court. Now we are completing the entire catchment.
You just talked about the advertisement you made for tender. And that reminds me of the state government's consciousness to empower the Anambra. And I know we have many Anambra contractors. And NEWMAP is driven 100% by Anambra State government. Is there any deliberate effort by NEWMAP to see that some of those contracts go to the Anambra as means of empowerment?
In terms of what you call the institutional arrangement of NEWMAP, it's a public advertisement that invites everybody and anybody. That means everybody from everywhere is invited. You cannot tell somebody from Katsina State that you cannot participate in the project in Anambra State. Remember, this loan is actually being guaranteed by the federal government. You cannot tell somebody in Canada not to participate in the NEWMAP project in Nigeria. Remember, the funding is provided by the World Bank. So our arrangement does not allow us to preclude or exclude anybody outside of Anambra State to participate. So everybody is welcome. To that point, we have quite a number of Anambra State people who are participating as contractors and consultants to NEWMAP. The projects at Amachala was completed by one of our own contractors from Anambra State here. We have another project in Abagana that's been done by another Anambra State person. But it's not always that the companies or the contractors are actually resident in Anambra State, but they have components of Anambra State as part of this project. You understand what I mean? Now we have a long list of contractors, consultants who do studies, people who perform other types of services for which are paid, that are actually exclusively residents in Anambra State. So, for example, you cannot go and bring somebody from Lagos or even Enugu to come and do community outreach for you here in Anambra State. So, to that point, yes, Anambra State that people are participating. Everybody is invited. Whoever wins, no matter where they are from, you know, it's all a matter of competence and how you have presented your case. When you advertise something in the papers, one thing is for people to come to indicate interest. If you don't indicate interest, then we will not know that you are interested. The second thing, when you indicate interest, have you carefully read the requirements and presented your documentation to support yourself according to those requirements? If you want to hide something from a black man, put it in a book. Why? Because he wouldn't read it. Quite a number of times, our people come expecting that they will win this thing. Meanwhile, they have not fulfilled the basic requirements of the Article 2. So what does that put you? So these are some of the things that we experience with our people. That way we can help ourselves.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give NEWMAP and honestly, I think we're leaving this place far, far, far richer in knowledge, deeper knowledge and understanding of what you do in NEWMAP. As a matter of fact, as an individual, and I'm sure I'm speaking for most people here, I didn't know that you also engage in palliatives for the people. When I see your vehicles and your adverts and all that, and I see erosion sites, I just think about NEWMAP and erosion control. That's it.
I would like to especially appreciate our orator. You know, Anambra Welumadu. This is why I can shout Anambra from anywhere across the world, anywhere I find myself. Anambra. And I'm proud of the kind of people our able Governor Obiano Pichasela, Kawero, Potasia, the right places, those square pegs in square holes. So we appreciate you, sir, for scoring us. Anybody young, you know, it's something that we have to beat. I'm not more than possible, but we'll try, you know, to do way better when it's our time to pilot affairs at that level. So I want to appreciate you and to send a message to the NEWMAP team to say, keep up the great work. We're watching, and sometimes we'll come to the project sites to see for ourselves what's going on, and to encourage you from a closer range. And also to say that in any way you want us to be part of what you're doing, please feel free. We'll always avail you of our time. Thank you so much for availing us of your time today. And we'll call on you yet again and again. Hear us, because we are your people. We are with you. Go on. You have our total support. Thank you so much.